Well, listen, Oren, you wrote a piece about the Raptors transition offense for Yahoo Sports Canada. So I think for most Raptor fans, we understand that the transition offense has been a backbone of the team and a strong point of the team for the last couple of seasons here. But you're noticing so far, 7 games in, that the efficiency has increased. So I kind of wanted to sort of start there. What's going on? How do the Raptors get even better at what they do really well?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think there's a little bit of a misconception in terms of like last year's team because they ran so much that people kind of assume that that's how their offense was good, was just by being a really good transition team. And last year they were actually pretty poor in transition. Like they did run, I think, the second most in the league, but their efficiency was like kind of towards the bottom half of the league, like around 20th or something, if I remember right. So there is a bit of a misconception there to start with. And it's like, okay, so how are the Raptors going to have success offensively this season? Last year, really, it wasn't the transition offense so much as it was just creating so many other chances and just winning the possession battle to such a historic degree that like even being really inefficient in doing that, it didn't matter because they did it to such a crazy extent through turnovers and through offensive rebounding. So it's like this season, are they going to be able to do the same format, or is the book going to be out on them a little bit, right?
Yeah.
In terms of that offensive rebounding and the turnovers. So what we've seen through the first 7 games, at least, is like they're not doing it the same way. They've hardly offensive rebounds. Their turnovers are down a little bit, but the transition offense has been like one of the most efficient in the league, both off rebounds and steals. And that's kind of the genesis of the piece. And I just wanted to learn about like, okay, why is this happening? Like what has actually improved?
Okay, well, yeah, why is this happening? Why is it has improved?
I think a couple things for sure. Like one is just internal development. So guys like Precious Achua actually has a handle now to where he's pretty comfortable putting the ball on the floor. And like if just one guy is in front of him, you've seen a couple times this year, he'll like Euro step his way into the rim and make it all the way there without any help. Siakam obviously is doing that a lot, just being really aggressive. Like a lot of the time Siakam is just drawing contact when it's like a 1-on-4. He doesn't even have the numbers, but he's just so aggressive. And so that's like internal development. The other thing is just like they're way more organized in transition. So whereas last year you might see a Chris Boucher bring the ball up the floor or OG Anunoby a lot, like now it's like, okay, Barnes, Siakam, or Fred VanVleet almost always are the decision makers in transition.
Okay.
So after the defensive rebound, the ball is finding them pretty quickly, and those guys are making decisions, and the spacing has been a lot better for them to actually make good decisions. And I think that's like the 2 biggest things.
I mean, so that approach, right, where they're looking for their 3 best playmakers, it makes a lot of sense, but sometimes they have the downside of slowing you down a little bit, just in case those guys aren't the ones at the top of the floor when the break happens or when the possession flips. And that's something where I think if Nick had his way, he would have all 5 guys push. But I think that's a good adjustment from last year, because when we saw guys like Precious have the green light before he was fully ready, or some of the other guys getting the green light, it didn't fully make sense. I feel like this year, it's more like a yellow light.
Yeah.
Like, just make sure like no one's turning.
Yeah. And,
just like make sure you can get through traffic and actually finish.
Yeah, and one thing that's kind of a middle ground of that is like Precious can grab a rebound, take 2 dribbles, but then if there's a guy in front of him, he can find Pascal, who can then continue the transition attack without slowing it down, because Precious started it, but he's not the main decision maker doing it. So that's like a little bit of a middle ground. But definitely there's, I think in general this season, a bit more of a yellow light in terms of like the shot selection. Like Pascal has the ball way more than we saw last year. Like they're way more intentional about who has the ball, who's taking the shots. Whereas last year it was like, all right, go have fun, guys.
Yeah, it did have a bit of that vibe last season. Yeah, I mean, I think, Alex, just from what you have seen of the team with your keen eye of tactics, has the need for a transition offense for the Raptors been as dire as it was last season? Because it just felt like last year, so half-court offense, the Raptors just weren't that efficient. I think that was a big focus of this team coming into this year. Does the half-court offense look better where you don't have to rely as much on the transition?
No, I feel like they still need the transition as a huge part of what they do. I think, you look at the 3-point numbers, and I think you look at Pascal and you look at how they've done in the half-court. I'm sure the numbers are pretty promising. Like through the first
They're not.
7 games. They're not? Okay,
They're
good.
not.
Then it passes the Stephen LeBron eye test. But yeah, like, no, I definitely think you look at a game like they had against Atlanta, which I'm not sure they're going to do that every night, like having the 43 points in transition. like they need that as part of their offense just to win some of these games just easier. Like I don't want to see them having those slugfests against the Miamis and like even the Philadelphias like every night. Like that was the one thing that stood out to me last year too, that triggered all the conversation about all the minutes that the starters were playing. Like they were forced to play all those minutes because we were playing close games all the time.
Yeah.
Like where are the games where they're able to just have the breathers like they did on Monday against Atlanta? We used to see that all the time, right? And I think that's like the hallmark of a team that's more consistent, that's getting better, and that's taking care of business. So I guess to answer your question, yes, I do feel like they still need that transition offense as part of their package.
All right. Well, I think that is also where I stand, but to me, it's like how much of the way you play on defense is geared towards fueling that transition offense, right? Because sometimes when you look at the Raptors, they do sell out a lot defensively to try to force some of those turnovers so that they can get in the fast break more. I made the comparison to soccer a lot because, it's just my personality, I guess. I love soccer.
Your personality is soccer.
Honestly, it kind of is. But
and a scooter back from the shop.
Yes, I did scoot into
Got
work.
some repairs yesterday.
It's all good. You want to test drive?
No, man, don't. For anybody that has a scooter, just wear a helmet. Just be safe
and stay out of the bike lanes.
Aren't they supposed to be in the bike lanes?
Somehow I disagree with all of this.
I don't know.
Okay. It's tough being in the bike lanes in general. You get yelled at by cars, by civilians, by bikes. Anyways,
do you want to pivot to a conversation about how we can have
it's probably too early.
Efficient transit in the city?
It's never too early.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anyways, you were talking about soccer.
No,
you make the comparison.
Yeah, in soccer, a lot of times teams like organize their teams to attack using their defense, right? They want to win the ball high up the pitch, and then they can create a quick chance. It's almost like that for the Raptors in a way. But like Oren, defensively, do you think the Raptors are as much tilting towards trying to force turnovers and deflections to fuel their transition break? Or are they just sort of playing more solidly on defense and finding other ways to spark the fast break?
It's both. Like to get into like the nitty gritty numbers, like last year they were really good in transition off steals, but off defensive rebounds, they were really inefficient, right?
Okay.
This year they're good in both areas. So off defensive rebounds, like there's a couple plays you'll notice where like Nick will call it like semi-transition, where a guy will walk it up the floor, make it seem to the defense like, oh, we're going to get into our half court set, and then bam, like fire it up the floor, and then it's quickly a transition opportunity. But to your question, and you were talking about this yesterday, I think, with Paul Jones about like how Koloko lets them play even more aggressively, right?
Yeah.
Defensively. I definitely think they're at least just as aggressive this year, and they do use their defense to fuel that transition. And like to Alex's point about the half court offense, because I was also curious. I thought it did look better this season, honestly. So my eye test is wrong, but they're 24th in half court offense this season. Sorry, up from 26th last year. So pretty much along the same lines, right? So the half court offense has not been very efficient. They're relying a lot on that transition. And yeah, I think the defense is like a huge part of that. And like one thing that I got cut from the story was Nick Nurse talking about like how if you get a stop in transition and then you blow the layup or you turn it over. Sorry, if you get a stop on defense and then you blow the transition opportunity, that's really like disappointing for your defense the next time you run down the floor. And it's like,
sure, yeah,
for the team spirit kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
Whereas if you get a bunch of stops and every time you get a stop, you're actually scoring the ball, like that provides a pep in the step for the defense where it's like, all right, let's go. Let's get another steal. Let's do this again. So I think there's, when it comes to the defense and the transition offense, I think they like play off each other quite well. And it's like a positive feedback loop in a way.